Hey guys, just wanted to show off my impending doom archmage legionair. Primary concept is that it is a mana stacker, taking advantage of this node in particular to double my mana from intelligence, and then taking advantage of the 30% less cost of skills to deal with the archmage cost. So the skill I've chosen to scale is impending doom, because it takes 15% of your current mana and adds it as base damage. So with 9.5k, it's like 1400 base damage, I believe, roughly. Um, and then taking that and ignoring the chaos damage part for the most part, and scaling the ever living shit out of Archmage. So basically, you take like 9x the base damage of the chaos and just make it as lightning. And then because I'm a mana slash intelligence build, I can take advantage of these nodes for increased sources of damage. And then via the amulet, I take my mana globe and turn it into defense. So this is kind of the best of all worlds, where you can take your defense and turn it into offense, and then it also scales your increased, your more multiplier, and your base damage all through one scaling vector. Um, and then in Pending Doom, since it's a curse, or a curse support, you can take advantage of scaling your curses for offense and defense. So for instance, I have Blasphemy Temp Chains on a 6 link. The slow mobs at a pretty increased effect. And then with this node, this node, all the curses, or all the enemies that are cursed, are also reduced by 15%. So mobs become incredibly slow trying to run at me, which grants a huge safety net. And then also, because Impending Doom is a curse support, you don't need certain items to scale plus levels of supports or gems, because your base damage comes from a support. So it allows you to run a scepter with pretty much no downside outside of losing cast speed off a wand. And because of this adaptive catability node, um, all my abilities can be used via my highest stat of int. So I can run some pretty interesting aura choices. For instance, I can run attrition, which is a huge damage multiplier for bosses. I can also run like overwhelming presence to lower their stun threshold and their ailment threshold. And then all my supports, I can basically choose whatever support just kind of fits the build the best for that, because I'm not limited by any stat requirements. Um, as far as gear, every piece of gear that I have, if it has int or has the ability to roll int on it, it has int, since I get double the effect. But for the scepter, it's basically mana, int, and spirit. Ideally, this would have like mana regen as a or a suffix and a higher int roll, but not many people are collecting these scepters to sell, so it's a pretty niche market. Rings are just typical archmage int stacking rings. Armor is just int, spirit, ES. Same with the gloves, boots. The only other interesting piece is the shield. Typically, most people take this shield and scale rarity on it. I've chosen to take it and scale mana. This turns into be quite a bit of mana, almost 3,000 from a single item. Um, However, it has a bit of a bug where the ES gain from or the mana gain from the shield doesn't work with the amulet for whatever reason. But yeah, it turns out to be a pretty strong build. I'm utilizing Etlich Battery to turn my extra ES from my gear into mana, and then going CI to become immune to chaos damage. But I am ignoring Mind Over Matter, because since the skill's based off your current mana, you can't really afford to go low on mana ever, because you lose all your base damage. So it's really just relying on Temp Chains and 7,000 ES as a defensive pool or HP pool. And then survivability, I've took Eternal Youth, which allows my life flask to be quite strong, because I can drain my mana a little bit to get a huge effect of the flask. And since I'm using the unique belt Ingenuity, 20% of that flask is applied recovery instantly. And then I also have some jewels with like flash effect on them if I can find them. Yeah, so I have like probably 20 or 30% flash effect. Um, Ideally, if I got a maxwell scepter, I could fit in the support gem for an aura where you get 30% increased effect of your flask, um, which would give me more health sustain. Uh, Further improvements to the build would be fixing my anoint to this. It's just incredibly expensive for what it is. Um, and maybe some different unique jewels. I haven't quite landed my finger on which one I would want. The only one I can really utilize is this guy, which gives you 12% int. This is the best cluster area I can find for it. That's not wasteful. Does not mean there's not a better one. But yeah, jump into a map and show it off. Finish crafting this guy real quick. Well, we'll do a simple map boss on a backwash. I'm not sure of this layout. But for clear, it's pretty safe. I mean, it's got pretty large AoE. The way Impending Doom works is any enemy you curse and rip the curse off of, um, it applies Impending Doom, which is an AoE explosion that has a cooldown of 0.15 seconds. So you can take advantage of this via three support gem interactions. Um, so with Curse Ground, you apply a Curse Ground, which makes the curse affect an area, but you're limited to one area. So a Spell Cascade, you can make it flip-flop for AoE. It applies 3, and then each time you cast, it puts a new one down so that it triggers Impending Doom. Eventually, you would need CDR to scale this, and there's also some weird issues going with cast speed. And for single target, since this has weird issues with cast speed, I swap in Echo. Unless the boss is ginormous, and Spell Cascade can flip-flop the target more than once. This ends up triggering Impending Doom multiple times per cast. So even though it doesn't really do anything for the curse, it's just triggering the support gem multiple times, which makes this the easiest vector to get damage. You have to be careful with cast speed as well, because since it's using archmage, each time you cast the curse, it triggers the archmage's 5% of current mana, or 5% maximum mana as a cost, and then each time Impending Doom triggers, it also costs the 5% of maximum mana as a cost, which turns out to be really expensive and hard to sustain. So the cast speed, it's kind of a pull and take scenario where you have to get cast speed, then you get a little cast speed, need more mana regen, and thus forward. And cast speed is a pretty limited stat. I've only managed to get it on rings, and then some of the tree, because I can't get it on a scepter, and I can't justify giving up the scepter as, like, for a wand, because the utility you get out of a scepter with the auras just seems too good to pass up. But yeah, like in maps, it's pretty much just point click, things die. Um, does quite a bit of single target. Uh, make the build go more would be the anoint. Just min-maxing the cast speed and mana regen and more mana. Um, I don't know how much farther the build can be taken. I've not tried the pinnacle boss because I haven't found a citadel, even though I'm almost level 95. Just GGG, please fix, on a side note. Let's see, is this the boss arena? Yeah. So for bosses, I swap in Echo. This is not the boss area. Oh yeah, it is. And I put down Sigil Power for a big more multiplier. It's like 60% more. But not the best single target, but it does pretty good. This map had 80% increased monster life, and it was basically CC'd the entire time. Other thoughts I've had about the build in case someone wants to try to copy it with some other ideas. Uh, Originally, I was going to try Original Sin to convert all the lightning damage from Archmage back into Chaos. However, Original Sin or conversion in general does not convert gain as damage types of anything back into the element that it's converted to. It certainly appears the order of operations is gain as happens after everything, minus increases or more multipliers to that damage type. So basically, if you have chaos damage and then lightning, and then you try converting it back to chaos, it it doesn't work because the gain as operation is after the conversion. Um, I don't know if that's intended. It certainly makes items like Original Sin seem awful. Um, I don't really get the point of it. And then other thoughts would be like trying to do this on the Stormweaver, which certainly has a place because you can abuse a couple other mechanics like double shock effect. It could be better late game. I don't know how you deal with the mana cost. Maybe Arcane Surge mana stacking covers that. Um, and then just being more efficient in your tree might justify not being this for this int stacking node. Um, but I like being a little hipster. I thought this was an interesting take on the mana casters and something slightly different. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy.